Hope everybody's doing well.
Yeah, I think so. At least for me, speaking for myself. Let's just give it a minute here. As I see some people are still joining. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. For the record, we're recording as we have in previous sessions. It's August 5th, 2022. These are the negotiations, collective bargaining negotiations between Pasco Hernando State College and the United Faculty of Florida. We did exchange, each side has exchanged by email some proposals to present this afternoon. I just emailed Gary, you, and Caitlin an MOU, which I'll put on the screen here momentarily to kind of go with what I've sent earlier. And we did receive your email from this morning. So I thought maybe a place to start would be with the compensation. And we can kind of walk through and see if you have any questions on that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen unless you disagree and want to start elsewhere.
No, we're fine with that.
Okay. Okay, hopefully you have the spreadsheet on your screen.
Yes, we do.
So this is the latest compensation proposal from the college. And in a second, I'll ask Brian Horn maybe to walk through a little bit about the methodology, and so that everybody can understand it. There's several worksheets part of this spreadsheet. This is the first one, and it's similar to what we proposed before. Ultimately, the third worksheet, I think, is kind of the specifics as to each faculty member. The columns indicating, you know, sort of what we are proposing in terms of wage increases. These are all for current employees. Brian Horn, are you on? Do you want to kind of walk through a little bit of the methodology as to how we came up with the latest proposal? And then Gary, if you or the union have questions, we can try to address those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, okay, Brian, if we take a look at column K, which is our column number 11, again, that's starting out, we're doing a couple calculations like we did previous. But first, we're looking at what the minimum of the scale, the new scale rate will be. We're then looking at in column L, the amount of experience people had coming in to the college, which was up to 8, they could be granted. Multiply that by the factor that we have for the credit for those years. Again, at the top, the PhDs was 2.5. So that comes out with a 9,800. So you're also then the next group of columns in O through Q, or 15 through 17. We're doing the same type calculation of calculating the value at 1% for every year that the individual worked at the college. And we bumped that up from the 0.75 that we had in the previous proposal. And then what we do is basically you combine what the minimum new scale should be, add what 8 years credit they should have got under the new scale rate. And then the credit for the new years of experience at PHC and come up with the total. If the individual makes less than what the that calculation is, then they get an increase by that amount. If they make more than that, in the previous proposal, we said they got no increase. You know, we all had a little bit of concern about that. So as you can see in column U, or number 22, we made sure that everybody at least got a minimum of $1,000 increase. I guess if you want to scroll a little bit further over, let me try. All right. The compression field is then us trying to equate for, again, because we're only given a 1% credit for somebody who's been at the college. So example, say somebody came into the college with 8 years experience. They're getting a little bit higher factor, the 2.5%. So then if an employee came into the college with no experience, but has been at the college 8 years, if you calculate that to the 1% for the 8 years, then they would be making less having worked here and obtaining the 8 years experience versus the employee coming from the outside and bringing 8. So that's what the compression is trying to do, is trying to make that correct and whole, and making sure the person inside at the college is making the same amount of money who has the total same amount of years of experience. So that's how the compression is done, which then gets you to column X, which is the final increases with all increases of what their salary would be. The column Y 26 is the percentage increase for this distribution. And then the other one is the total increase of the previous 5.5% across the board, plus the current, to kind of give you then a look at what the total increase was over these 2-year period. So again, I think, you're trying to use the logic of the compression. It does a little bit of the same of what you guys were looking at to do, was saying, hey, if I'm looking down a table and I'm in this grade and I work so many years, this is what I should get. It's kind of doing a little bit of that same thing and making sure somebody with like years experience is being made whole. Like as the example I gave before, if you did 8 years, we don't want to pay somebody more who came in with 8 years experience and has 0 years experience at the college than somebody who's got their 8 years experience at the college. We want to make sure it's fair that those individuals are making the same amount of money.
So that's the methodology, obviously, that was used. Are there any questions as to that or any comments?
Well, I do have one question. When we went through this, it appeared that there were about 6 faculty members that under the new proposal would actually be making less money next year than they did this year. If there is that 1,000 minimum increase, why would that be showing that they'd be making less money? I don't know if that's just a miscalculation of their salary.
If you let me know, I didn't catch that, if that's true.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that. Gary, can I share this?
Go ahead, Caitlin.
Yeah, okay. So it was actually, I did a comparison. Let me get this up 1 second. Okay, so.
Again, we wanted to make sure too, we right size that some people came later in the year and got a contract that wasn't a full year. So again, we make sure we adjusted the salary we're starting with to the annualized salary.
Can I share the screen, Brian Koji? Thank you. There we go. Okay. So I made a spreadsheet and I took all of the names and put their current salary, ignore that for now. Your current proposal, our second proposal, and the college's old proposal, the original proposal. And if I compare the college's new proposal with their first proposal, there are these people, 6 people who make less under the new college proposal relative to the old college proposal. So I don't know what was happening in the calculations there, But I can send this to you so you can see what was going wrong with these 6 people.
But they're not making less than what they're making now.
No, they're not making less than what they're making now.
Now, and
So
again, too,
they're-
I think you guys had provided years of experience as a rounded number too.
Okay,
And I went in there and said, no, I'm gonna actually do an actual calculation to the actual date.
okay,
So it changed some of those numbers slightly, which if you've got what seems fairly fractional increases on some of the salaries, it might be that is the difference.
okay. I mean, these people are still getting raises relative to their current salary,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure what was different between I didn't look down that detailed about what was different between your original college proposal and the current college proposal. But it is true, they're still getting raises more than what they're making right now. So I'll send this to you if you want to look at it more closely. But yeah, do you want to see this, Brian, or you just want the names?
No, you can send it.
Send it to
Okay.
us.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Brian, for explaining that, because there was a little confusion about that from some of the faculty. I do want to acknowledge the administration for making an effort to compress the salaries. It's a lot better than what we've had in the past. And I can tell you on behalf of the faculty right now, we could come to an agreement on this today with one caveat. And that caveat would be that the minimum salary for that bachelor's level would be at 43,000. It would not cost the college a lot because there's very few people that actually would come under that. But if we could get to a 43,000 minimum salary at that level, we can TA this.
and
So-
can I talk about, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, before you go there was a couple of things too that we were putting together as part of a package. I don't think are all that controversial, but let me run through those before, and you'll probably need to discuss them on caucus. So,
Okay.
let me share my screen again here. This is what I just emailed over to you as well. It's just in the hopes that we get that we can get a agreement today. We're proposing to do an MOU. And hopefully that's on the screen in front of you. The first paragraph essentially is just the compensation proposal, whatever we land on here, to attach it as the MOU. Second paragraph of the MOU, we're trying to clean up and I'll try my best to explain some of the issues here, but Darrell can maybe also, if I leave anything out, trying to clean up some of existing confusion, I think is the way I presented, or the way things are done, to make sure everybody knows. And that's the number 2 is sick leave. Right now, sick leave, of course, we're not proposing any change in the sick leave you're accrued, but there's some confusion as to how sick leave is accrued versus how it's used. And in putting it in a new system, we want to make sure it's clear that sick leave is accrued and used on the same basis. Right now, you get under the statute, you get 1 day per month accrued, but day is not defined. What we've been using is 8 hours accrual, and I guess historically there was some use of 6 hours for use. So we're proposing making everybody on board with the concept that it's the same. And I just picked 8 hours. You accrue 8 hours per month. You use to the extent you use a day, it's 8 hours. So that's what number 2 on the MOU is supposed to try and explain. Number 3 is an issue with awarding prior years of experience. From my discussions with Darrell, there's an issue this is for new hires primarily. When you're first hiring, we're awarding prior years of experience. We have to verify that. Sometimes it's not input accurately, or there are updates to that as things get verified, and is a real issue when that happens multiple times throughout the semester, throughout your first year. So what we're proposing is that to the extent that you have to verify that any change that occurs to verified years of service after more than 30 days of a semester, then it's not going to become effective until the following semester. So we want to make sure we get that done as quick as possible. It gets in the system, because otherwise payouts and things of that nature have to be, it's a real bear basically to have to try and figure it out when you have multiple changes happening throughout the year to your pay rate, essentially. That may, to the extent that's confusing, you have questions about it, maybe we can have Darrell respond. And then the fourth is, this is something I think we talked about way back when we were working on the initial contract. But we do still want, I don't recall offhand if we landed anywhere on this. I think we kind of tabled it for further discussion down the road. But we do want a kind of reciprocal commitment here in paragraph 4, that faculty who are not going to be returning the following year have an obligation to advise us by the end of May. As you know, the college typically has to advise faculty by, I think it's April 1, if you're being renewed, if you're on the annual contract. So we're not holding you to that, but make sure at some point thereafter by the end of May, knowing whether or not you're going to return, because a lot of the input for payroll and whatnot has to happen at that point or shortly thereafter, and undoing it, not to mention hiring and whatnot, is a real problem. So we're asking the faculty to advise the college, if you know you're not going to return, to let us know by the end of May. So that's paragraph 4. We're presenting all this kind of as a package with the compensation proposal to try and clean up these areas. And we, just for the record, I can put on the screen as well, if you want to go through the proposals that Gary emailed over to us this morning and walk through. That might be good, so we can see what you're proposing. We have not had an opportunity to really discuss those as of yet, and we'll need to take a caucus to kind of discuss whether or not those are amenable to build into this as well.
If I may, I have a few questions about the MOU.
Sure.
Okay, can you scroll up, please? Okay, for number 2. So the current practice is, let's say you have on your schedule a particular day, you have, two lectures and 3 office hours. If you did not attend that whole day, you would currently take 6 hours of sick leave. And now this would be 8 hours, just so it's consistent. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Darrell, you can confirm that.
That is correct. There's
Okay.
been, we haven't got too much pushback from a lot of faculty members, but there's been a few that have come back and says otherwise. Where we're telling them to put in the 8 hours, and there's like, where it's only 6 hours. We're like, but you're accruing it on the 8 hours. We're not recommending a change. Using your example, if the faculty member was working part of the day and then they're taking 3 hours, then there will be no change there. You just put in the 3 hours. It only applies to the full day usage, and it's typically only come up. It rarely comes up during the term, but it typically comes up around like the commencement timeframe and all college day. If a faculty member can attend, that's typically when we get the discussion back and forth.
Okay, so if I miss 5 days of work, that would be 40 hours of sick leave,
Yes, ma'am, because you accrue it at that rate as well.
even though I only have 25 duty hours on my schedule.
That is correct. I mean, essentially, the only other option that it will leave us with is modifying the way you accrue sick leave, because the statute doesn't tell us the hours. As the institution, we set the hours. The statute state per day. And then because in the legacy system, some of this may have been systematic limitations in the past. Since you can only set it for 8 hours for most employees or what have you, everybody earned that 8 hours, including faculty members. We really didn't have any issues with it, except for in situations where, there was conflicts. Basically, most faculty members, we tell them to put 8 hours. It's a non-issue. And then every now and then you'll have a faculty member come in and they're like, no, it's 6 hours and this, that, and the other. It's like, well, but you're out for the whole day. So this is just trying to work around cleaning that up.
Okay, thanks. And then for number 3, just so I understand it, let's say I get hired August 10th and I have 5 years of teaching experience and 3 years of industry experience. So I get 8 years of credit. I get hired on August 10th. I start August 15th. You do the paperwork, but it takes a little time to get the verification of my 5 years and my 3 years. What this is saying, let's say I got the 3 years verified at the beginning of the semester, I would get that credit to my salary then. But if I didn't get the 5 years from my other job until November, that would start over in the new semester. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will kick
Okay.
in as of January.
Would you get the back salary from the first semester for the 8 years of experience? It just changes when you calculate it, or does it change the total amount?
It changes the total amount, but only moving forward, because that part is not controlled by PHSC. It's controlled. It's complicated a little bit because it's controlled by the employee, obviously giving us the information. And then some of it is outside of both the employee and PHSC's control when you're looking at external factors. So a lot of companies are getting away from doing references. However, trying to calculating it is not the issue. Let me backtrack. Calculating it is not the issue. Paying it to the employee is not the issue. It becomes an issue. We had 3 of them occur this year when an employee leaves after year 1, and then you're trying to now calculate the payout of the contract for that employee. And then if you don't remember, you have to go back and calculate all of the back pays that are owed for that particular employee. And then that becomes a very complicated matter to say, okay, when did this change? When did this change? When did this change? And this year we had like at least one faculty member, 2 faculty members that had 3 changes throughout the year that left this year, and then trying to go back and do the payout calculations for their contracts, because obviously they're not going to be here for the full 26 pays, trying to calculate that amount and pay that at the end of their, once they resign with us. This is aiming to address this particular matter, so that if it's only 2 changes that we're making throughout the year, it's a lot amendable than having 5 changes or 4 changes throughout the year.
Okay. But let's say it's just a simple case and my former employer doesn't return the paperwork for my 5 years of experience until November, which is neither my fault nor the college's fault. I don't get paid for my 5 years of experience for the first semester.
That is correct. That's the current practice. The experience that we grant to faculty members have always been based on receipt. It doesn't go retroactive. So there is an onus on, obviously, on the employee to get that to us. PHSC, what we're doing on the HR side of the house is we are trying to come up with other solutions that will make it easier. Because I don't like the fact that, if the faculty member has it, again, I understand that the faculty member doesn't have all control in that at that point. So I'm trying to figure out, there's another option that I can float towards everyone. However, I have to go and look at the accreditation issues and things of that nature, because there is an option that works best in the private sector that we could use here, but that option comes with a very stinging, it's punitive in nature. If an individual was to say, yes, I have 8 years of experience, and then all of a sudden there is no 8 years of experience, but I'm not floating that idea right now because I don't know what impact that has on accreditations and things of that nature. And that essentially would be taking everything at face value. And then if something happens, then essentially we're saying, well, you essentially fudge the numbers. If, that would be proven, and then you take corrective action. And private sector, they just terminate you if you lie about something. So I'm trying to find a middle ground here, and that's what we're proposing at this point.
Okay. And then I had one more question, Brian. Could you put the MOU back up, please?
Sure.
So number 4. So we have a 9-month contract paid over 12 months. So if it's May, I worked my full 9 months, but I have 3 months of pay coming. How would that work here? I'm not getting those 3 months?
No, so remember, for faculty members that exit, they still get paid out. And that if at any point throughout this process, they say, okay, I'm not returning for the new academic year, we essentially do the calculations, try to catch their payment up. So they still get paid the balance of their contract. They just get like a lump sum on the way out. However, the challenge, this right here ties specifically towards not only payout for payroll purposes, but also for the benefit side as well. And again, with some of the same 3 faculty members that we had this year, they did the right thing by saying, okay, I'm exiting, I'm not returning for next year in January, in June, I believe. And 2 of the faculty members, when we explained to them, because we're bound by Florida Blue, whenever you give us that notification, we're essentially in your benefits as of that time frame, because you're no longer in paid status. Both of them argued that they should still have benefits all the way through July. And we're like, no, that's not how this works. So this aims to cover not only benefits, payroll, but then also it will be a strategic move as well for, it allows for for the deans to kind of plan accordingly as well. They know someone isn't there, because from the discussion that I had with the 2 faculty members, they both, and I don't know how much the session has gone past what we the 2 of them and I have discussed, but they both were floating the idea of, well, so essentially what it's saying is it's not advantageous for a faculty member to tell you that I'm not returning, which essentially means that if the faculty member doesn't tell us, they're in paid status all the way through July. Most likely they'll still be in paid status, because remember, you guys get your first paycheck next week after you return and start working 1 day. So you work on a 10th, you get paid on 11th. And if a faculty member is in that situation, we had one last year, that was in that same situation, it took forever and a day for us to recoup those funds from that individual. And they specifically did not tell us, because they didn't want to be, and this person disclosed it to us. They told us that the reason why they didn't say anything is because they want to stay in benefit status, have benefit coverage all the way through August of last year. So we had to tell them, we had to give them the bad news, that saying that, okay, yes, you got paid in August on the first paycheck. However, you have to give us back that paycheck because you didn't work. Not 1 day, you didn't have any class assignments or anything of that nature. And on top of that, your benefits ended in July. And that was a big brouhaha with that exiting faculty member. So this is just aims to clean that process up, to put a little bit on, as Brian says, like have it be more reciprocal between both parties. You know, we have a notification for non-renewal for annual contracts by around the April 1st time frame, 30 days before the end, on the existing practice with the policy. And what we're saying is, since the term ends in May, at least by the end of May, let us know the intent to not return for the upcoming year. If there is, if you're, and that's only for individuals that's not returning. If you're going to be here, there's no need for you to do anything more than that, because you would still stay in paid status, benefit coverage, and so on and so forth.
Okay, I appreciate the sentiment of reciprocal, but if you're a faculty member, you're going to be applying for faculty jobs for the fall. As we know, PHSC doesn't hire people until August half the time. So how is that faculty member supposed to know in May if they're going to be employed in August? Like, I don't think the situation really is reciprocal, because if the college decides not to renew someone's contract, they know that in April. But if the faculty member decides not to stay at PHSC, that'd be a pretty big gamble to terminate their employment in May, because they have no idea if they're going to be employed in the fall, because most colleges wouldn't be hiring in May.
That becomes a big if in that regard. And I do understand that, you know, if you're out searching, I would think that the faculty members that is aware of the fact that they won't return for the upcoming year most likely won't start the selection process. They won't start looking for other positions in April or May. Most likely they'll be doing so well beforehand. That's typical of most job seekers. If they're on a market, they're not looking 1 month, 2 months ahead of time. They're looking further out, you know, because they know they won't be there. And I'm specifically looking at this from a contract standpoint. That's been my experience.
Okay,
So-
but we're in an academic schedule. We're not in the private sector.
No, I'm using my experience in public sector, not private. Private, we don't have contracts. So
Okay.
that's not an issue, but in public sector, both at K-12, I'm looking at what I know in K-12 and what I know in higher education. Since I've been here over the 4 years, faculty members that know they're not going to be here, they've been on the market already. Because we do get those resignation letters well before, in most instances, well before the end of the contract year. If they know they're not returning, commencement comes around, we most likely already know those individuals that are resigning and retiring during that time frame, and we process them accordingly. However, every year there's probably like a handful, it's like 5 or less, that typically would come in, and it becomes an issue the closer we get to the new year. However, it also puts an undue burden, and not only on our existing faculty members, if they're picking up existing courses, but also the academic deans when they're doing the planning and assigning for those courses for the fall term as well. So there is reciprocity there on both parties that will be beneficial. Again, I don't think that I'm giving a lot of credit to faculty members. I don't think that they will wait until May if they're looking for a job for the upcoming year, knowing that they're on 9-month contract. I would think that they're looking well in advance. But that's just me giving credit. I mean, if I was in their shoes, if I was a faculty member, that's what I would do, knowing that I was on a 9-month contract.
Okay, well, I can speak from my personal experience. I was an adjunct in North Carolina. I started applying for jobs full-time in April all over the country. I was hired by PHSC a week before classes started. That meant my classes in North Carolina had to be covered by someone else. But I was looking since April, but I didn't get hired until August 18th. So I then in that situation, would I be required to pay PHSC for my health insurance for 3 months?
If you are exiting and you are in the last day work, the answer would be yes. Because technically, and here again, I'm trying to clean up the process, but technically speaking, according to our agreement with Florida Blue says whenever, when you're leaving is when your coverage ends, basically, when you're leaving the college because you're not employed. If they ask us, when was the last day work? Your last day work isn't in June or July. I can't put that down as a last day work. I have to say that if you're not working anytime in a new academic year, your last day work with the college is May 5th. So because of that, technically your coverage stops during that time frame, which is where you have to have some type of onus between both parties to state that if I know I'm not going to be here, then just put that out there or what have you. And there's ways to massage. We can set up some parameters to basically guide us through this. K-12, they have a similar approach where they call the intent to return process. I didn't want it to be an intent to return process because that forces every faculty member to answer that question. I was trying to do the reverse of it. It says if you have an intent to not return, then only those individuals have to respond. And we assume that everyone else will be here like we typically do. And, for the most part, you're going to have a higher ratio of individuals returning versus those not returning. So I only want to hear from the individuals that plan to not return. But there is some structure you could put in place to kind of guide through that.
Okay, then Jessica Lawasi, you're unmuted.
Oh no. Oh, sorry.
So I appreciate what you're saying. Could we negotiate with Florida Blue that if have you not notified the college that you are not intending to return, you are in fact working? Because there's really there's no possible way for a faculty member who is hired August 10th by another college to have notified the college in May, but at the same time, they weren't not working. So they weren't on contract, but they weren't available to be working. So there's just nothing they can do if they don't get hired until August 10th, whether they, new or not. If they don't have that offer letter, I think it's a little big leap of faith to tell the college I'm not returning in May, hoping that you get hired sometime before the next semester somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I am this section here, my team and I, we look at a lot of these pain points that we have to streamline the process. There is an option here that we can use to fix all of this. However, I'm thinking along the lines of a faculty member and saying, would this option be acceptable? And that option would be, I can take the amounts that under our current benefits, if I'm looking at individuals who have dependents and they have deductions, Do I want to take those and compress all of that into 10 months? But that raises the rate, and I don't think that that's amenable. But by doing that, then I don't have to worry about all of this. I can still say, give me an intent to return, and I can take the punitive piece of it off already and say all faculty members benefits in on if you're not returning on 7/31. And if you return, obviously it just keeps rolling on from there. However, again, the piece that will be difficult is collecting those deductions on the front end on a 9-month window, not having any deductions across the rest of the pays over the summer. But then again, it doesn't, I don't like it because it takes more money from the faculty member already. So that's the reason why I'm looking at this and saying, okay, maybe this is the middle ground, and this can still be massaged. I mean, I like the discussion that we're having. And I think that you're putting forth some valid points as far as like the hiring processes across higher education here in PHSC. We have room to improve in that regard. But I also want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure either. And it is very difficult, especially with the 2 individuals that we had this year that actually utilized their benefits during that time frame to have that discussion. And I get it. I do get it, but at the end of the day, I can only report to the agency what I can report. And that's not a negotiation that we can have directly with Florida Blue, sorry. I have to have that with the consortium because they negotiate on behalf of all colleges. So that would not apply to just PHSC. It would be collectively speaking, so.
So in the consortium, the contract is if you have a 9-month contract, which we do, you are not employed as of May 5th. Is that across all the colleges that are in the consortium?
So it is. Most
And how
colleges in it. So
Go
keep
ahead.
in mind, if you look at this along the lines of your contract is still 10 months, but it's paid out over 12 months.
Okay, yeah.
Or 9 months paid out of 12 months. So you're 26 pays. And at the end of the day, if a faculty member leaves after only 10 months, they still get the full amount because now all you're doing is grabbing the remaining pays and collapsing all of those in to pay them out. I'm essentially trying to do the same thing for benefits to make sure that we're not in that situation. And the added bonus is to make sure that we can plan accordingly. That's the added bonus. But all colleges do the same thing. If you have a contract and we say we're going to pay you a certain amount, we make sure that you're paid a certain amount underneath that contract, unless and I have to pull this back. Some colleges do have faculty members that are like just year round. They're regular year round employees. So they fall on the same umbrella like the rest of us. So if you terminate for any particular reason, there is no need to do anything because you're working year round.
So how do the other colleges in the consortium deal with this issue? Do they require faculty to pay back their health insurance if they get a new job in August but didn't tell the college?
No, they go and they still pay everything, and then they recoup those funds from the faculty member.
So they have to pay them back.
They have to pay them back because you're
Can you
not.
share those? Do you have those contracts?
I don't have their contracts. I can get feedback from all of my counterparts and tell them to ask that specific question. I can get that and share it with you.
Please, thank you.
No problem.
Part of what all of this entails, unfortunately, is the insurance companies, and there's very little that you can do. Sometimes they look the other way, but the bottom line is even if you're paid, even if you have benefits paid for you, but you don't meet the definition of the insurance company's employee, there's always a chance that they could pull the rug out from under you, which I've had happen in other clients. In other words, if you're working and you're under contract and you return the following year, the insurance through the consortium, or in your case, Florida Blue, then still considers you to be an employee, even if you're only on a 10-month contract, you're essentially on a leave, if you will. But if you were on 10-month contract with no return, then they look at that. I've had a case involving this. They look at that as you're essentially trying to shoehorn somebody who's not an employee into coverage under the insurance. And if they have their own definition of employee, and their definition controls, not the college definition. And in the case that I had, just to give you an example, the employer and the employee both said this person has health insurance covered. The procedure that they had should be covered. And the insurance company said no, because they didn't meet the definition. They were essentially resigned employment, but was on unpaid status for some X amount of months thereafter. And it was not covered by insurance. So that's, I think Darrell's trying to make sure we don't end up in that situation. But really, the reality is, even if we paid for the benefit and somebody left, I get what you're saying, Caitlin, if somebody doesn't know, so they leave in July or August, not having known that they were going to be leaving in May, the reality is they're likely not covered by that insurance anyway. And we're hoping that the insurance company, if you had an expense, doesn't catch it. But the insurance company could always do it. So there's a risk on the employee side as well. I don't know that there's an easy answer to it is the point, but that's what we're trying to get at here. Like I said, Darrell said one other point to do it is to compress all the pays on the benefits in the 10-month too. I'm not sure that would work, but I doubt that anybody wants to do that.
But if you don't have any dependents, it wouldn't be any different either, if you compress the pays.
Right. So I mean, there's no employee premium.
Yeah, it would not. If you have zero premiums and the college is doing all contributions on your behalf, you are correct. There wouldn't be. But the contributions aren't the issue because there's no need for the college. We can always fix the contributions because we're processing the payroll on our end and obviously just communicate with the employee those changes. But when you have the employee deduction because the employee is actually paying, then that becomes difficult because now you're trying to recoup those funds. I get, some employees are able to turn that around very quickly. Others, it's difficult. It's like pulling teeth basically. And we work with them the best we can. And sometimes it can be so difficult where, you may have to end up taking action against the employee, which none of us love doing. But at the end of the day, the college has that obligation, financially speaking, to do so. So
Would one possible solution be that the college pays the employee's premium to Florida Blue for a year in 10 months? And if someone leaves after their contract ends and they got benefits, they would only be responsible for paying back their dependents' health insurance?
that's a
Cut out there,
little
Darrell.
bit different. What's that?
What?
I didn't hear what you said. I don't know if everybody else heard, but you cut out there on my end.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you now.
Okay. Now I was saying that, right, that's exactly the same thing that we are proposing. The only difference is that I'm speaking payroll language here. You're looking at two buckets here, contributions and deductions. On the contribution side, it's not difficult to do. On the deduction side, it is difficult. So trying to set that up becomes an issue because at the end of the day, you're still pulling from gross pay from the employee side, and then you're trying to, communicate with the employee and navigate how to get those funds back after you've already deducted from the employee. If it's not the full amount, basically, if you're short by any particular reason, you have to kind of recoup those funds. So the contributions are difficult because once the college pays for them, then at that point, if you're no longer in paid status, then even that becomes difficult because we have to say we need that back, because we've paid on your behalf and you utilize and this, that, and the other. So again, I like the conversation. I'm all open for thinking outside of the box and trying to come up with some type of solution to make that work. But the goal here would be not only to have that early notification, but also to avoid us being in a situation where an individual is leaving during that time frame, and we're already in a situation where I have to I'm having these discussions and payroll is talking to them, and I have to call them and says, well, you owe the college X number of dollars. And, sometimes it's a very easy discussion. Other times it could be very contentious. So it's just trying to alleviate having all of those issues.
Well, from a faculty, I appreciate the payroll perspective and the Florida Blue perspective, but from the faculty perspective, if I'm on a 10-month contract on 12 months pay and it's July, I'm really neither working nor not working for the college, because even if I was teaching, over the summer, I wouldn't be eligible for benefits. So there's no way that I could be eligible for those benefits, even if I intended to work in August. So I can't be employed or not be employed. There's the option of being employed through July isn't there for me, whether I'm intending to come back or not, I can't choose to be employed until July or until I know when I'm leaving. I can't make myself employed for July.
Gotcha. And you're correct. You're correct. Because the contract is set up at under 10 months, there is no way for you to be employed in June or July of the year. Because you are already employed in part of the month in May, then that qualifies. So obviously there's no issue there. But once you get into June and July, that becomes more of the issue from a reporting purpose, if the individual is exiting the college and not returning for the upcoming year.
Well, one thing that maybe this is for caucuses, but maybe, and I don't know if this would fly from Darrell's perspective, is in light of the complications, have language that, if you know where you're not returning in May, provide the intent. If there's some uncertainty there, maybe there's some compromise language to recognize that. I don't know what that would be, but we could maybe brainstorm some of that so that there's some of that inequity that could come up in your situation you're describing, Caitlin, may be able to address through language. Just I'm thinking more for purpose of trying to get an agreement, if we can today, on the bigger picture here. I'm not sure that either side wants to hold anything up over this particular issue, but
No, I definitely wouldn't hold up anything on my.
You cut out.
lost you again there, Darrell.
No.
Oh, you're back, I think.
Okay, I must be having hiccups with my with my internet here. I hear you guys very clearly, but I do think that the feedback that I actually wanted to get. So I appreciate that, Caitlin, on your end. I would not hang up the process on this by any stretch, but it is something that I would like to address. And I am, again, open to any feedback on the union side that would address this issue. And it doesn't have to be as stringent, but I do want to make sure that we have something in place to address that matter, because it comes up every single year and it never gets easy when you have to have those discussions with faculty members that are exiting. So
Would one solution have, like, you could share your offer letter from your other job or something like that? Like, I wasn't hired until August 2nd, so I couldn't, something with that. I don't know what Florida Blue would react to that. I mean, you can think about that, but that's just throwing that out there.
Can I ask a point of clarification question here? What you're proposing here has been the status quo from before we started negotiating the original contract. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is just cleaning it up because there have been inconsistencies. And speaking with my staff, going back historically speaking, there have been inconsistencies in that. So I'd much rather, have that. I didn't want to just keep it being inconsistent and then people come back and says, well, I heard this and I heard that. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, make sure that the union is aware of that, and then see what we could do to address the matter moving forward.
So in cleaning this up, have we changed any of the status quo policy in what you're proposing today?
We have not as of yet.
I think that part of it, Gary, is that we don't view it as changing the status quo, but maybe there may be some disagreement or because of inconsistencies as what status quo is. So we want to be upfront with it.
Okay, I guess my question is this what we did last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Is this policy being consistent since then?
Everything with the exception of number 4, because right now there is no reciprocity on notifying the college of leaving. That is new. And again, just trying to address an issue that comes up every year. But the other items are all consistent with existing practice and just looking for clarification and make sure all parties understand and is agreeable to that. But number 4 would be new.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Technically, I know we're on a 9-month contract, but basically, I feel like, doesn't the college basically owe us 12 months of benefits since we worked all year? And wouldn't that continue through the summer just by nature? I guess I don't really understand that.
Not necessarily, because again, if I use that same approach, if that would be the case, then every faculty member that will be exiting the college would still have benefit coverage all the way through July 31st. And again, I can't report that to a vendor that you're no longer employed by the college, but still have benefit coverage all the way through going past your separation date. That can't be the case. So the college doesn't have an obligation to do that, but we have always provided it for individuals that were returning. It's a non-issue. So again, this doesn't change anything for, 99, probably 98, 99% of our faculty members that return every year. But this only addresses the small percentage of individuals that exit. Then it does create an issue for those individuals, and really only those individuals that use the benefits during that time frame. And then they have, like, you get the insurance companies having discussions about who should be paying what, when, where, and how. That becomes problematic. But the college would not have an obligation if the individual is not an employee of that time. The college wouldn't have the obligation, but we do pay. Historically speaking, we just continue to pay because there is an assumption that the individual would return for the upcoming year. So because of that assumption, we're reporting for those 2 months that you're not working, that you are an employee and you are working for the college. The minute that changes, then that assumption goes away, at which point you get the argument between from the vendors.
Okay, so wouldn't the college then owe the employee those extra months of benefit monies? In other words, technically you worked your contract. There's 3 months of benefits that is technically part of your salary, or is considered part of your salary. If anything, wouldn't the college have to pay us for the lack of benefits provided for those months?
I don't think so. That is a practice that I've never seen in my HR. I'm 20 years now HR experience. I've never seen that with any company, both private and public. The only time an employer would pay would oftentimes be if an individual is waiving benefit coverage. Now that is an option where the employer would maybe pay an employee because they're opting out and they have coverage elsewhere. But I've never seen an employer pay because an individual should be on a contract, and then now that the contract is the contract is null and void, that yes, the college will owe them for that. We do pay you for the balance of the contract, but not the benefits.
So the distinction is not the salary, Caitlin. You get paid for your salary, your paycheck. It's
Right,
your
but I'm
health
saying that
insurance.
basically that contract is a 9-month contract to cover a year. In other words, you already did your 9 months and you fulfilled your obligation. So I would argue that basically we should have benefits until our next contract takes effect into August, whether we quit or not. And if we quit, I would argue that the college should be paying us for those benefits that we didn't get. We did our job. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, you would owe us 3 months of benefit money. That's how that seems to me.
No, I do. I absolutely hear where you're coming from. I just I've never seen that before in any employer. And I think that you're at that point, we're getting into the realm of trying to, I think what you're arguing here is that wouldn't be, you're essentially removing the vendor from the equation altogether. And you're saying that any deductions and would cease, any contributions, however, that the college typically would make, you're saying that the college would pay that to the employee. And again, I've never seen that in any capacity, both private and public. I've never seen that happen. But that's neither here nor there. I get where you're coming from though.
Darrell, could you share the information from Florida Blue about what it means to be employed, or the contracts and with Florida Blue and the consortium, how they word it?
Yes, ma'am. I'll see if I can get that agreement from the consortium and get that over to you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Do you want me to put up on the screen what Gary emailed over this morning so you guys can?
Yeah, won't we do that? And then I'll circumnavigate back to your proposal for the money, because I did want to address that starting salary again. But yes, we can go through these proposals first.
All right, let me put up.
And basically, these three proposals are in collaboration with the faculty senate and looking how to spend the 35,000 stipend that was told that we would have. So we basically broke it up into three pieces. The first one is you have on the screen there is faculty mentoring program stipend. This is a stipend for the faculty mentoring program, and it'll be revised as follows. You see that we'll be conducting a small pilot consisting of three full-time faculty, one from each division. The stipend we're proposing at $500 per mentor per semester, fall and spring semesters only, for a total of $1,000 per mentor for 22-23. And the total for the pilot would cost the college $3,000 for academic year 22-23. Per the faculty mentoring program document presented by the faculty senate, faculty mentors are to commit to a 2-year academic period. As such, the same stipend proposal will be presented for faculty mentors to complete their 2-year commitment for 23-24 academic year. And then based on the results, additional faculty mentor stipends in addition to the pilot faculty may be requested next year, 23-24 academic year.
Okay. Anybody with
Any
questions on that?
questions?
I have one question, Brian.
Go ahead.
For that, with that proposal, are we looking at that being a one-time payment at the end of the term? Just wanted, I didn't know if there was any feedback that you could provide regarding like how you would go about doing that, paying out that proposal.
We really hadn't discussed that, but that small amount, I think you could do a one-time payment, maybe at the end of the term.
That's typically how we would do it, for similar to like statement of service payments or what do they call it? Revision, creation and revision courses. Those are typically like one-time payments at the completion. So just wanted to make sure, see if there was any issues with doing a one-time payment at the end, should we agree to it?
No, I think we'd be agreeable to the one-time payment at the end of the semester.
Yes, sir. That is correct. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on here? The second proposal we had is for Phi Theta Kappa Advisor. Phi Theta Kappa is a very competitive student organization as well as an academic honor society. And the advisor does a lot of work. They travel, they work considerable number of hours, way beyond their teaching hours and et cetera with members. They prepare the members for competitive projects. They help them with Hallmark Award submissions. They're involved in a number of college and community projects as well. So there's a lot more behind the scenes work with Phi Theta Kappa advisors. We're proposing that the Phi Theta Kappa advisors receive a stipend of $2,000 per year. Now, there are some caveats to receiving this stipend. As you can see, the advisors are going to be required within the first semester as an advisor to complete the Phi Theta Kappa advisor education course if they haven't already done so. They need to complete the annual chapter report. They need to attend the inductions unless a class assignment is a conflict with that. They want to work with the chapter to set the 5-star chapter developmental program goals and submit updates for the college, or excuse me, the chapter's progress. They need to attend at least 2 executive board and or chapter meetings a month. They need to work with the chapter to do the college project and submit the Hallmark Award. You need to work with members to complete the Honors in Action project and submit a Hallmark Award. And then finally, have the chapter submit at least 2 regional award categories. So it's a pretty straightforward proposal, but take any questions you may have.
That's advisors. So how many advisors are there?
I think
Brian,
it
this is
depends on the
Bob.
year. Oh, yeah, Bob.
Yeah, it could be as many as 5. We haven't had really 5 active chapters, but when we get back to being most active, it'll be a total of 5.
Right, so the potential total, if we fill the 5, would be 10,000.
Correct.
Bob, do you know how many we have this coming year?
We only had 2 because the staff that advised won't be eligible. So the 2 that we had was Connie and oh, I can't think of his name right now, but we've only had the 2 for the past 2 years. Caitlin.
So this is Billy, and I do have a quick question. So this is Phi Theta Kappa, and I know within our health programs, we have 4 programs that also have advisors. So why was Phi Theta Kappa the only one chosen for this discussion?
Phi Theta Kappa, Billy, has been brought up because it has a competitive nature. So we did have stipends before with Brain Bowl and forensics. And Phi Theta Kappa has put a proposal together where you heard one of the criteria being the submissions for the honors in action and several of the other criteria, which those are competitive in nature when they submit how they're judged. So we would look at other proposals the same if they came forward, but they would have to meet that competitive nature threshold.
Bob, this is Allison. In Workforce, we have Skills USA, where it's a number of our workforce programs participate, and each program has an advisor, and Skills USA is competitive at the local level, state level, and national level. And we've had students go to each level. So we have Phi Theta Kappa. Why isn't Skills also on here? So again, there's quite a few, and I think if not to recall that there was either an IMM or a rule that says that advisors would not be paid.
Well, the Skills, I'm not aware Skills USA has been active. Phi Theta
Yes, it
Kappa has
has.
been active. So,
Skills.
and again, we didn't have a proposal brought forward from them. Brain Bowl and forensics are already on the books as being meeting the competitive threshold, but they're just not active right now. So we don't fund those with a stipend.
Well, Skills, because of COVID, they didn't meet the past year, I think, or last year they had their first meeting. And we had folks that went to the state level.
Yeah, so Bob, to support what Allison is saying, when I was the Dean of Workforce, this is Ed. Skills USA was very, very popular. Jack Plant had been our advisor for them, and Jack would spend an extensive amount of time over several weeks coaching these students, mentoring these students, getting them to prepare in a competition that was statewide, with a lot of awards that were eligible, and our students did very, very well. So I certainly get Dr. Howell's point about Skills USA, and so I do think that's valid, but yeah, due to COVID, that kind of went away for a year or two, but it's coming back. I have some other questions here, and not so much about which clubs, which groups should qualify or be considered. I'm a little bit more concerned with just some of the how this might play out. Would this be for a full academic year? In other words, from July 1 through June 30th, because there may be some of those activities that would continue through the summer. The other thing is, what if an advisor, and we've had this happen, starts out at the beginning of the year, that person has to be replaced. Do we need language in there for all the contingencies of things that might happen? And then you're listing 8 deliverables, if you will. So what happens if the advisor is not able or does not deliver on some of these? I just think there needs to be some more language. I see it as being a little bit of a challenge at this point. And those are my questions and concerns with it.
I can answer the first question. The per year would be for our academic year, even though there are some things that move into the summer. I think the way it's written, it would entail an academic year.
The reason we brought forth just Phi Theta Kappa is because that was brought to us. I mean, we'd certainly be open to widening the advisors that get stipends. I think that would be a great idea. And we could have some more specifics on the requirements and the payment, but I mean, we're open to other possibilities.
Yeah, and this is Bob again. I think the Student Activities Committee is open to it as well. The Phi Theta Kappa was the only one brought forward because I believe the Phi Theta Kappa is the only one active that we've been talking about right now. But certainly, I mean, the Student Activities Committee would love to see quite a variety. They'd love to see Brain Bowl come back, forensics come back, but without active groups, it's kind of a moot point to talk about the stipend for the advisor if it's not active.
And I will say one comment that Ed made, I do agree that there may need to be some language in there that stipulates what happens if a person has to be replaced. How does the stipend work then? We're agreeable to adding, language that, we'll consider any language that you would want to propose on that.
Bob, I know Student Activities has their own budget. Is there room in that budget to pay advisors stipends?
I'll answer for Bob
Yeah,
and say
Caitlin,
no.
that's where,
I'll answer for Bob and say no. Enrollment declines have brutalized their budget. They're struggling. Sorry, Bob, you can go in.
well, this was voted on and approved. But again, I mean, these were the only, the Phi Theta Kappa was the only active group that was brought forward. So, I mean, the Student Activities Committee, bottom line, has to allocate money to wherever the student interests are. But that's the only area right now where we have active groups of the ones we've mentioned. So,
Thing we'd have to be aware too, though, I mean, if we mean advisors of faculty or their advisors, other staff members.
yeah, Brian, they were clear though, this doesn't apply to staff members. This is only faculty. So if a staff member, and we've had them that advise Phi Theta Kappa, they're not eligible for this stipend.
So Bob,
again-
to that point, I just have a question or a comment that I wanted to add. I think we have National Honor Societies for psychology, I think it's Psi Beta, and I think for English. And I know for a fact that those are faculty advisors as well. So again, whoever said it earlier, I do think that we need to maybe look at this more fully across the board before we make any decisions. Because again, I know Psi Beta for sure, and I know they're active. And I know there's an English Honor Society as well. Can't remember the name right now, but there are a couple of other faculty that are advising. So I just want to put that out there.
And this is Billy, just one more. There's no more active club. I get the competitive piece, but Human Services and Dr. Williams is out there all the time, so.
Yeah, again, the only thing I'll say is that Phi Theta Kappa brought forward the proposal with the criteria in it to make it competitive. And the Student Activities Committee would be open to those other groups if they want to bring forward proposals and meet that competitive threshold where there's enough elements to it that would hold some accountability to the, the advisor in that group being that active. But this was the only proposal brought forward, but certainly the other groups are eligible to bring the proposals forward if they want to.
And we want to be careful that we can't rely on the SGA to be funding all these. Because right now they're struggling and using basically carry forward money from previous years to basically balance their budgets. So we don't want to have them have to do a major cutback of other programs and services they're providing.
So this is it again, and it seems like I'm trying to understand this. It seems like, Dr. Bate, I'm hearing from you, this was something that, the Phi Theta Kappa had brought forward, but what we're actually proposing here is an MOU between the college and the union So I really, okay, is it really a function of student activities, or is it part of the negotiation that we're trying to do here and the entire agreement that we're going to have between the college and the union? I would propose, I would not want to see this get in the way of some of these other things, certainly with compensation is huge, that perhaps, this is just a thought, this is tabled and there could be a small committee put together that consists of the student activities, faculty representation, maybe the deans that oversee the programs that have these different clubs, and maybe somebody from the business office, Brian, to kind of look at it, make some determinations and recommendations and bring it back at a later date. That's just a thought.
I guess I still think, Darrell, you can weigh in, but I mean, if you say, well, if somebody performs the duties as a faculty, you pay them, but if somebody provides it as staff, then you don't. I think that's an equity concern.
It
I think
can
part of
be.
the issues is this, the union, I mean, the faculty are unionized and the staff are not, so.
Yeah, but again, you're all our employees, and we have to treat all our employees equitable.
I think both statements are valid. And you are correct, Brian, where you look at it saying that we have our employees across the board. And Caitlin is correct as well when you look at it and say, unfortunately, we have, fortunately or unfortunately, we have faculty members are represented by a union and so on. We would not be able to arbitrarily like leave that out. You have to put it out there. If it includes them, we have to put it out there and say, yes, it's a negotiated item. By contrast, on a staff side, it's not. And anything that is done, if we're looking at it from an equity standpoint, again, we have to agree to this, but if we're looking at this from an equity standpoint, then that will fall back on us as to whether or not we want to make that equal application apply to staff members as well. So again, I think we still have to navigate the negotiation process, and go from there. What say you about that, Koji?
Let me just say something else about the staff. Currently, the staff that are doing the Phi Theta Kappa advising are the activity coordinators. And by the nature of their job, they're already paid and in their job description to help out with all of these different functions. But I think there's a good reason why the advisors of the honor societies like Phi Theta Kappa, why they would be designated as faculty members, because they have the expertise in those areas for the honors in action and those other things that were mentioned, to where you would want the faculty member with that kind of expertise to mentor the students.
And in addition to that, I will say, Brian, we could go back and review job descriptions, but I believe on the faculty side, it may not, I'm not 100% sure if these additional responsibilities are written into the job descriptions, whereas on the staff side, a lot of these responsibilities are written into the job description. So that might help address some of the equity issues, but we'll have to go back and, maybe table the discussion and see if that is indeed the case.
I just maybe just add a comment to close out. I know that there were, I guess, a list of activities for discussion today, and I know we're heading up on just after 2 o'clock. So I'm just wondering if there's a list of things that we want to just agree that we want to have a discussion and agree on today, and maybe table the rest of the items just so that we don't run out of time and make sure that we accomplish what the group wanted to accomplish today.
I think that's a good point. Let's go on to the last one that we received from the union this morning, then we can circle back. I know Gary wanted to talk about compensation and talk a little further, maybe on a short caucus after all of these, and see where we stand. Gary, do you want to address the faculty development?
Yes, the final one is the Faculty Development Institute stipend. As you know, FDI is very much an integral part of providing professional development, technology, cooperative opportunities here at the college, and it helps connect and strengthen the faculty. As an alternative, I know the colleges have been exploring an idea of having a staff person head this up. We're proposing an alternative to lead to the opportunities and activities of FDI for 22-23. in lieu of a full-time faculty person or full-time staff person, there'd be 3 full-time continuing contract faculty members, one from each division, selected to lead opportunities and activities of FDI. Each faculty member would be selected and receive $5,000 stipend for the year 22-23. The leadership of FDI can then be reevaluated for the following year, 23-24. The selection criteria and job duties will be developed collaboratively, with the PHSC administration and the faculty association. Again, it's a pretty straightforward proposal that we're presenting, but we'll entertain any questions that we have.
All right, I think we understand that. Did you have, want me to circle back or put up the compensation proposal?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to the thing that I brought up before you came up with your proposal for a TA. We really would like to see the starting salary at the bachelor's level be increased to 43. That would go a long way to helping us being able to TA that package. And I just wanted to let Caitlin have a minute or two here, just kind of explain where our rationale is bringing that minimum salary up to 43,000. Caitlin, you want to address that?
Yes. Can I share my screen? Oh, can you unshare so I can share, please? Thank you. So we have kind of talked about this before, that in some of the technical health fields where you can be employed as a faculty member without a master's degree, so at the bachelor's level, kind of 2 things. One, their qualifications for teaching students in that field are not really reflected in their academic degree, because a lot of what they learn is on the job or through other credentials. And so having a master's degree in something related to surgical tech would not necessarily make them a better surgical tech instructor. So that's one issue, that maybe their qualifications are not reflected in their academic degree. So having fewer academic degrees should not mean that they get paid that much less. The other issue is many of these technical health fields, they can make a lot more money actually working the job. So this is surgical technologist. In order to become a surgical technologist, you need an associate's degree. And with an associate's degree, which you couldn't even, would be less than what our faculty have, you can make $48,000. Radiography, if you want to be a radiographer in the field, an associate's degree is the education typically required, and radiographers make up to $77,000. So we have faculty that have more qualifications, they have a bachelor's degree, and they're making less than what their students would after they graduate. Dental hygienists, also the same thing. Dental hygienists typically need an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, and as a hygienist, their median wage is $77,000. Also aviation, some of our faculty in aviation have a bachelor's degree. Their students, when they finish their degree program with the associate's degree, have an average salary more than the faculty member. So we just think it's important to make it reasonable for faculty with bachelor's degrees to teach at PHSC based on the kind of the market issues, and then also just their academic degree doesn't really reflect their qualifications. So that's, yeah.
I think one thing though you want to take into consideration, those jobs are based on 2,080 hours a year.
That's what I was going to say on that end, is all of the market typically bounce all jobs off of 20-80 hours in 12 months. So when you're looking at that, hopefully we could do a comparison that will be comparable to that. That's not me taking a position or anything, but just, providing information.
Sure. So even if a faculty, let's say, worked 9 credits in the summer, that'd be 18,000 plus 42,000, that's 60,000. They're still making less than what they would as a dental hygienist, let's say.
Yeah, but I think that what Brian is highlighting on the 20/80 hours would be that same individual would be in year round, and they would be there for typically eight hours or more, and reporting those hours accordingly, basically. So I think that's where you might have some slight deviations in comparison to we have our faculty members and the loads that we have. We do provide overloads when they exceed that. I know we could get into a discussion on trying to address those matters as well. But at the end of the day, the actual contract itself is being based off of the equivalent. I kind of did the math because we're working on some other things, the equivalent of like 19/20 hours instead, if you're looking at a 9-month contract versus a 20/80 hours.
One thing too, I guess, Brian, could you pull back up the spreadsheet? Real quick? If we go into the sheet that was breaking down the summary totals, please, third tab. One thing I noticed, we had recommended in our salary schedule, you see at the year's credit, I have it in the spreadsheet at 2.5, actually recommended go down to 2. So that group I need to recalculate again. And if we do entertain an increase in the entry level, I again would have to go into that group also and do a recalculation of the compressions because it'll change people's numbers slightly. So if we do accept that and come back to you on that, there will be some recalculations for some of the people on the compression. Just wanted to let you know that.
Now might be a good time to caucus, sounds like.
Yes.
Wait,
agree.
Gary, did you send the health program director proposal?
I never received it from you.
Oh, I think I sent it later. Okay, we have one more proposal. I'll send this to you as soon as we finish. Let me make sure I have it up. Yeah, okay.
You want to put it on the screen or is it not?
Yeah, I'll do it right now. Here we go. So when I understand that we already negotiated the MOU for the health program or the program directors and department chairs, but that was in May, I think, before we had the full budget and before we had negotiated all the salary. So we didn't really know the available amount of money for our directors and chairs. So the current MOU has $6,000 stipend for Arts and Sciences Department chairs, a $7,000 stipend for the Workforce Development Program directors, and a $5,000 stipend for health program directors. We are proposing to add an additional $2,000 for the coming year to those nursing and health program directors to bring their total compensation to $7,000. So it would bring them up to the same level as the Workforce Development Program directors. And this would be just for this coming year. We could negotiate what happens after that. So on the spreadsheet that Brian Horn sent, said there was $35,000 available for stipends. We're proposing $3,000 in total for the faculty mentoring, $15,000 total for the Faculty Development Institute stipends. There's 7 health program directors, so that'd be $14,000 for the health program director's additional stipend. And then we had the $2,000 for the PTK advisor, so that adds up to $34,000. Should, right? Yes, 34.
I'm coming higher that you got 3 plus the 10 for Phi Theta.
Well, we just did 1 for Phi Theta. We can maybe revisit the number because I don't think there's actually 5 this semester or this year for PTK. So that would be somewhat unknown.
But there might, yeah, I think we'd have to make sure that the language, again, Brian would have to add in that it says advisor, instead of advisors, because
Okay.
We have to make sure what financial commitment that's making.
It's just before 2:30. What do we think we need for a caucus? Half an hour?
Yeah, I think we need at least a half hour to look over your proposal.
Okay.
And
Hey,
Brian, I'll send that program director to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Brian,
probably give it to
Brian,
you.
I have a hard end time at 3:15 because I got a doctor's appointment at 3:30.
All right, let's do half an hour and let's try and move it along quickly.
Faculty use the caucus room.
Administration, you should have information on the caucus line from Pam's invite.